Hey, Leadership on the Rocks community. All right, you know it and I know it. When you get the promotion, your organization's going to give you the title, the pay, and the people, but they won't necessarily equip you in how to lead. And this can leave you sitting in a valley of absolute overwhelm where you're fighting the same daily fires you always seem to be fighting. You feel like you just can't get ahead. Well, I get it. And that's why I created my 5-day leadership makeover challenge. If you take my leadership challenge in just 5 days, I'm going to show you the right proactive tools that you need to get ahead and to put out those daily fires that you're always fighting. In fact, I'm going to show you what it takes to get to the next level and get another promotion and increase your influence and impact. So it's super easy and it's free. Just go to leadershipontherocks.com/5 days. That's the number 5. So again, go to leadershipontherocks.com/5 days to join my 5-day leadership makeover challenge. So don't miss out on this challenge. Give me 5 days with you and go to leadershipontherocks.com/5 days. Fear comes at us, and it starts usually as imposter syndrome in leadership. Who am I? What do I know? I can't do this job. It's just constantly trying to rear its ugly head. So how do we step into God's calling for our lives, but remove that aspect of fear and protect ourselves from it?
It gets easier as you get older, but when you're younger, it is challenging. But what I've discovered is you just gotta take it on head on. You gotta overcome it. It's just like John Wayne said, courage is saddling up even though you're afraid.
This is the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, where we equip and empower leaders like you to thrive in and create harmony between your professional and personal lives. I'm your host, Bethany Reese, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking with Pulitzer Prize-nominated journalist and bestselling author Troy Anderson about fulfilling your higher purpose and mission, no matter the chaos that surrounds you. Troy Anderson is a Pulitzer Prize-nominated journalist, bestselling author of The Military Guide to Armageddon, The Military Guide to Disarming Deception, and Your Mission in God's Army. He's also the vice president and COO of Battle Ready Ministries, founder and president of the Inspire Literary Group, and co-host of Frontline. You can find out more about Troy Anderson at his website, troyanderson.us, battleready.org, and inspireliterary.com. Welcome to the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, Mr. Anderson. I'm so happy to have you.
It's a great honor to be here. Thank you.
Man, well, I'm excited to talk to you today about your book, Your Mission in God's Army. I have a copy. I've been reading it and I love it. And honestly, I just want to start with the introduction of your book, because from page 1 all the way to the end, it is a bunch of just relevant information, especially for the times that we live in today. So you start off with the introduction saying, the summary of polls that are out there are showing that people are just generally unhappy with their lives. They're unhappy with their jobs, with their marriages, with their financial status. And then you even ask us, and this was kind of hard for me, to rate on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are we with our lives? And the truth of the matter is, a lot of people are frustrated and unhappy with their life. And it's leading us to ask these big questions, who am I? Where am I going? Is there more to life than just this, my day-to-day life that I'm living? And that leads us to this question of what's my purpose? What's my mission in life? And, our listeners are leaders. And a lot of them are leaders, not only within the home, but outside the home in organizations. And we know that organizations, man, they slap that mission statement on the wall or on the paper, and then we don't talk about it. So it doesn't really guide us. So can you kind of build that cornerstone to help us understand when you're talking about mission or assignment from God, what do you mean?
Yeah, so Colonel Giamona and I wrote Your Mission in God's Army because we wanted to encourage people to discover their assignments, that their missions from God. So there's many different verses in the Bible that talk about how the Lord planned our lives from the foundations of the world. And so even though we have free will and we can make good choices, we can make bad choices, God has a plan for each of us. He gave us different talents and abilities and different gifts, and He has this amazing plan He wants us to discover during our life here. So for young leaders, you may be looking for your career, your ministry, your job, that kind of thing. And so that's an important time in your life to pray and to seek God and to try to discover that. There's also Bible verses that talk about we are created as God's masterpiece, created to do good works. And so we wrote this book to help people discover what is God's assignments, what is God's mission, what is God's plan or purpose for people's lives.
And I love it. And I think it really answers the question that most people are asking. We're just kind of over it. And this book has been really, really good. But I got to talk about, again, I love the book, Your Mission in God's Army. But I got to talk about the chapter of preparing for your mission. That felt like a gut punch to me. You talk a lot about Joseph, and just to make sure everybody's on the same page with which Joseph we're talking about Joseph the Old Testament. He's got the 11 brothers. He's the favored son. His brothers throw him in a pit, sell him into slavery, and then he actually ends up going to prison. So we're talking about that Joseph. And you say, and I want to quote you here in this chapter, suffering is out of vogue or fashion, especially in Western culture. But we learn more about ourselves through suffering than when things are going well. It is part of the preparation process, and God can use it to bless others. And then later on, you say, quote, many want to bypass the critical time of training and jump unwisely right into their assignments. This can have disastrous effects like discouragement, falling into sin, and hosting a host of other debilitating consequences. And these words are so true. This was the gut punch for me. None of us want to go through hardships. In fact, we want to run the opposite way. I don't want to go through that. That's hard. And too often we skip the preparation process. And that is not only how we grow closer to God, but how we find our purpose and our calling. So as our listeners may be going through a really hard time right now, how can you encourage them that God is going to use this for later? What encouragement can you give our listeners going through a hard time?
Yeah, so there's been a number of times in my life where, God used very challenging circumstances to help me, grow in my faith and mature and prepare me for what I'm doing now. I've written, several best-selling books. We have this ministry, and we're, reaching hundreds of thousands to millions of people. But I look back in my life. I've been a journalist for 3 decades. And there's sort of like a Jonah-like experience back in 2009. I was a reporter at the LA Daily News, and there was a conference. A guy at church said, "Hey, Troy, there's this prophecy conference. Maybe you'd like to go cover that." So I went to this conference at Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills, Pastor Jack Hibbs' church, and my first co-author, Paul McGuire, was there. And he said, the world is undergoing the greatest transformation since the Tower of Babel, coming global government, cashless society, and universal religion. And when he said that, I flashed back to reading Hal Lindsey's book, The Late Great Planet Earth, when I was 11, because that's when I first got this interest in Bible prophecy. And so I introduced myself to Paul, and we became friends. And he gave me a copy of his book, a self-published book called The Day the Dollar Died. And it talked about the end times. It talked about secret societies, all these sort of fascinating topics. But of course, these are the kind of things you can't, talk about or write about in the mainstream media. And so he started calling me and encouraging me, "Hey, Troy, we should write books together, maybe make a movie." But I knew if I ever did something like that, that'd be the end of my career as a mainstream journalist. And so I, like Jonah, was called by God to go to Nineveh to warn them of judgment. I sort of resisted that. And then I went through like a Job-like experience in my life where I literally almost lost everything. And then I just one day I woke up on the floor just crying, "Lord, okay, I'll do whatever you want." And this from that time on is that all these amazing things have happened, all this miracle-filled journey. So, when God calls you, it's not always easy, and he'll take you through different times and different ways for everybody, but to prepare you for your mission.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You know what I'm loving is I love how we can look to people in the Bible who are flawed, sinful people just like us. And you can gain such inspiration, such hope to see the character of God, his faithfulness, how he will pour his spirit out and go before people, but also how he disciplines in love. And there's so much inspiration. So far, just a few minutes into the podcast, we've talked about Joseph, you've talked about Jonah, you talked about Job. And so I just encourage people to dive into the Bible and find these leaders in the Bible and learn from their stories as well. But let's talk about our leaders, our listeners. Most of them are not in ministry. They're, in what we would call the secular world. So how can they gain clarity as to what their assignment from God is, but how it actually plays out in their vocation?
Yeah, so for people in the secular world, leadership, I was executive editor of Charisma magazine. I have a company called Inspire Literary Group, and we have a team of writers that help people write and edit books and get them published. So when you exist in the in the ministry world or the secular world in leadership, it's important to realize what God has put you in that position. And he's put you in a position for that purpose, for ways you can help improve the world, help people work for you, find their calling and their purpose. And so it's a position of responsibility, and he wants you to be a servant leader like Jesus, and inspire people and give them hope, and it's not just about making money, but it's also about fulfilling God's calling on your life, helping spread the gospel, being a good steward of the resources that God gives you, using wisdom that God gives you to do the best you possibly can for whatever your position is and your job.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thinking about how we carry ourselves, every organization, every industry is going to go through, the problems, the conflicts, the constraints, all these things. And how you carry yourself is going to make such a difference. And so I know so often we can feel pressure to be one way on Sunday when we go to church and be a completely different way, Monday through Friday as we're working it out at work, earning that paycheck. But really, it should be one and the same. Who we are every day of the week should be who we are. And what I mean is, you're not going around with brass knuckles bumping people with the Bible, just like, I'm a Christian, you should believe too. But it's how we love each other and how we serve each other through that. But I also now want to tap into some modern day things, right? So you're a journalist, you are literally a pro at keeping up with gathering information of what's going on. And there's a lot going on in our world, from the Israel Hamas war to the Russian invasion of Ukraine to natural disasters to inflation, everyday politics. I mean, should we even go there? Oh, and let's not forget, again, those problems, conflicts, and constraints that they're dealing with daily. That is like a thick, heavy fog of negativity and chaos. And it's hard for us to see, one, where we are, two, where we're going, and what we need to do. So how do leaders today stay focused despite all that negativity and the chaos that surrounds them in their work?
Well, one thing that's very helpful to me is to do like a daily devotional with my wife, and to pray, to read the Bible, and to draw close to God. Because there's so much chaos and so many crazy things going on today. I've been investigating for a dozen years. Are we really moving into these end time events that the Bible talks about? So people are somewhat afraid, they're anxious or concerned about what's going on. But as leaders, people are looking up to us. They want us to be, set good examples. And so by reading the Bible every day, you see all these amazing, just sort of regular people that God raised up and used as leaders, and the miraculous ways He used them. And what you find is that they're very brave and courageous. They inspire people, and God, uses them despite their flaws. And often, these biblical characters have high integrity. They all their decision making processes are based on doing what is right according to the Bible, according to God, because you just have to keep in mind that one day we're all going to stand before God, and He's going to review our lives. And even if you're a Christian, he's going to review how did you use the gifts and talents that He gave you. And we all want Him to say, well done, thou good and faithful servant. So as long as you keep that in mind and position the leadership, then you can stand before God one day and be happy with how you performed in life.
Absolutely. In reflecting on my own career, man, whenever I started implementing daily Bible study, prayer, and I was journaling, I became tethered to God in a way that I had never before to face whatever the day brought. And I cannot encourage our leaders enough to stay grounded, stay tethered to a relationship. We're not talking religion here of, checking the box of church attendance, but stay tethered to God in a true relationship. And like you said, that's going to make you better with the leadership character that you need, and the calmness as everybody's looking to you of, there's a lot going on in the world. Are we okay? Am I going to lose my job? Is the economy that bad? As other people are freaking out, you're on the stage to represent and give your testimony to Christ of just the peace that you have and that you bring. So thank you so much for reminding of this, of how important it is to stay in the word. So let's talk a little bit about all that negative culture, the high anxiety, all the negativity that's going on. Besides the daily scripture, how do we not let the pressures of the culture take over us? How do we stand firm and actually make a positive impact on the culture versus the culture overwhelming us in our jobs, and one of the easy things in business is the fads and trends, right? It's a fad and it's a trend that we need to follow, and you get a lot of pressure to do that. How do we stand firm to not let the negative culture overwhelm us?
Well, but beyond just, staying in the Word of God and prayer, those are the two most important things you can do. I also find that exercise is very important. So, usually each day or several times a week, I'll go for a bike ride. I used to jog for many years, and so that helps like reduce your stress and improves your health, keeps you in good shape, that kind of thing. So that helps you deal with all the anxieties and crazy stuff, especially when you're in leadership. There's a lot of pressure, and you have a lot of people counting on you and that kind of thing. So that's an important part of being a good leader and staying above the fray.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Um, Again, as I was reading the book, one line that you put in there was leadership and faith is developed through friction. And I just sat with that sentence for a long time. And I'm like, it is so true. Again, nobody wants friction. We don't want conflict. We don't want hardship. But it's so important that we go through it. Can you help us understand why friction is actually important in our leadership?
Yeah, yeah. So one thing I've learned over the years is that sometimes you'll get some criticism, or your boss will say something and want you to improve, and you can take it in different ways. You can take it as, you be angry, at somebody criticizing you, or you can just sort of hold your tongue, be patient, be wise, and really think about it, because the Bible talks about iron sharpening iron, and God uses different people, uses different circumstances, all kinds of different things to help us mature in our faith. So if you take sort of a long-term picture of things and just, wait, don't, speak in anger, and then just, take it to heart and realize I can improve. This is something I could do better. And then what you'll find is that if you can control your emotions, then you can improve in different areas and improve relationships and improve the job you do, the productivity, and many different areas of life.
Absolutely. What I hear when you're saying all that is I hear grow in emotional intelligence, but also grow in humility. And again, humility, just to make sure everybody understands what I'm talking about, it's not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less, right? And so you're serving others. But the emotional intelligence piece is we're human, right? We are sinners and we have these emotions. It's how do we be mindful of what's going on in the situation? How's that affecting me? What emotions is it springing up so that I can wait, no, I need to back down out of that emotion. I'm sorry that I'm feeling this way right now. Let's clarify and try to get on the same page with dialogue. And so much of that, when you remove those flesh sides of yourself, the anger, the emotions, the selfishness, it really improves your leadership, your servant leadership. And so I think that's so great that you mentioned those things. And looking forward, many of us are focusing on our leadership goals, our business goals, and at the same time, we're also working out our salvation, or some people might call that sanctification. But man, there's so many attacks on us, right? And let's start with one. Let's start with fear. Fear comes at us, and it starts usually as imposter syndrome in leadership. Who am I? What do I know? I can't do this job. It's just constantly trying to rear its ugly head. And it really sometimes can make us lose hope. It can keep us from obedience. So how can we overcome fear, even fear of what's going on in the world, if, end times, and a lot of people are talking, with the solar eclipse and all the stuff. How do we step into God's calling for our lives, but remove that aspect of fear and protect ourselves from it?
It gets easier as you get older, but when you're younger, it is challenging. But what I've discovered is you just gotta you gotta take it on head on. You're gonna have anxiety. Things are gonna cause fear and that kind of thing. But you gotta overcome it. It's just like John Wayne said, courage is saddling up even though you're afraid. And it's the same thing in the military. Soldiers have to go fight in wars, and they have anxiety, they have fears, but you just gotta be brave and do it anyway. So that's very important.
I love that. So courage is not really the absence of fear, but it's pressing on anyway. And you even talk about that. You talk about pressing on to accomplish the mission, right? Everybody's going to come to some sort of uh, problem, obstacle, hurdle that they have to overcome. And a lot of that will come with, what you said, anxiety, anxious thoughts, the fear, and things like that, that we got to press on, knowing that God goes before us in a lot of things. I've been doing the Bible recap and just like reading the Bible through for the year. And I'm amazed at the Old Testament, how many times God goes before people. And I got to remember that as I step into situations, leader. So you remember that as you step into those sticky situations, God goes before you, but stop and press into that and ask Him to be with you in that. So besides fear, do you think there's any other schemes of the enemy that is really kind of attacking us as we try to go and be on a mission for God and complete His assignment in our vocation or in our world?
Well, the second book I wrote with Colonel David Giamono is called "The Military Guide to Disarm and Deception." So when Jesus's disciples went to him and asked him, "What will be the signs of the end of the age?" The first thing he said is, "Watch out that no one deceives you." So today we live in a time of just massive deception. It's in the media, it's in entertainment, it's in business, it's in the educational system. It's all over the place. And so by staying embedded in the Word of God and drawing close to God, He'll show you how to navigate all this disinformation, psychological operations, just propaganda, fake news.
Mhm.
I've been a journalist for 3 decades, and I've never seen it as bad as it is now. When I worked in newspapers for 20 years, there's always sort of a liberal bias in the media, but today it's just over the top. There's a top-down control system going on now, and so you have to be able to navigate this. And one thing I found is there's a lot of great Christian and conservative media that does a very good job of telling the truth still. And so that's I read everything, but that's one way to
Yeah.
find out what's really happening and without all the agenda embedded in it.
Absolutely. And then add to that social media, to our younger leaders out there, that's where they're getting their news, right? And anybody can produce anything on social media. And let's not even get into AI and talking about deception. I've seen clips of people who are speaking or singing or whatever, and it's not really them. That is a scary thought. But fear will not get us, right? For God did not give us a spirit of fear, but one of love, power, and sound mind. So in thinking about just your book, your mission in God's army, discovering and completing your faith-filled assignment, and guys, I encourage you to go get this. But what are some key takeaways that our leaders need to know and apply to be able to grow in leadership?
I think the most important thing is to try to inspire people that work for you, and follow the model of Jesus. I mean, he was a great, amazing, inspirational leader, and so I mean, think about it. He inspired these 12 disciples so much that they 11 of them were martyred. They gave their lives. And look at the results. The gospel's now been spread around the world for 2,000 years. There's
Mhm.
2.5 billion Christians on the planet. And so if we model our lives after Jesus, the inspirational model he set, and of course you can't be perfect. I mean, Jesus said, "Be perfect as I am perfect." But we could try to strive towards that, to be follow his servant leadership model, and be inspirational to people.
Absolutely. Got to die to self daily, right? And then go to him daily so that you can stay tethered to him. So, in thinking about all the amazing things that you've talked about for leaders, how to stay encouraged and inspired, even through hardship, to find your purpose and to work that out, what is one poor decision that you would warn our leaders to avoid? As in, oh, please don't do that. Don't do this one thing. What would you say?
Yeah, I'd say, human relationships are very tenuous. And so people can, they can have their feelings hurt. They can be, become bitter towards you. So you just don't want to be angry at people. If you do feel anger, or you feel like you got to, sort of boss people around kind of thing, just resist that temptation, resist that fleshly urge, and just, take a little break and think about it for a minute, and then, come back and say something uplifting and edifying, to help them improve, or motivate them, that kind of thing. But don't use belittling words, or things like that.
Oh, that's such great advice. Yes, because once you hurt that relationship, it's so hard to get it back. Oh, so good. All right, where can our listeners go to learn more about you and your work, and where can they go get their copy of your book?
Yeah. So your mission in God's Army, it just came out a few days ago. They can go to Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Baker Bookhouse, but they can also go to my website. It's troyanderson.us. And then our Battle Ready Ministries website's battle-ready.org. And my company, Inspire Literary Group's inspireliterary.com.
Awesome. And I will have all of those links in the show notes, guys. You can just click on them right there. Mr. Anderson, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you and your expertise and the work that you've done with biblical truths of helping us stay focused on what God's called us to do.
Yeah, thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you. Guys, until next time, continue putting in the work of building your life and leadership on the rocks, the essential rocks. God bless. Remember, the most essential rock you can build your life and leadership on is the rock of Jesus Christ. Today's Bible verse comes from Revelation chapter 3, verse 20. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him and he with me. Hey, it's Bethany again. If you're enjoying the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss a single episode. Also, be sure to rate the show. We hope to earn 5 stars in serving you in leadership, and through your ratings, it'll help us get the word out about what we do here at Leadership on the Rocks. If you feel this podcast is helpful, be sure to share it with your friends, family, and coworkers, or anyone who wants to grow in leadership, but also have harmony between their work and home life. Thanks, and I'll see you again in the next episode.